But life is kind of like that,
Life
right?
is like that.
Yeah,
Life is
exactly.
like that,
So
right?
that's the point I really
So
like.
that's the point.
Yeah,
that
yeah.
happiness, if you
Right.
try to maximize happiness, then these are the sort of setback. right?
Exactly.
But then the setback is not exactly setback if you think your life goal is
Right.
psychological richness. So I think that's the sort of the message that I want to
Okay, wonderful. Hi, I'm an old friend of Dr. OEC, and I teach at Yonsei University, and my sort of area is happiness. Maybe you want to add some more details?
Oh, okay. So my name is Shigehiro. I'm a professor of psychology at the University of Chicago. Mark was, 2 years ahead?
Maybe, right? Yeah,
2 years
yeah,
ahead
yeah.
of me in the graduate school in the same
Right.
university, same department, same research lab.
Right. I guess friends for about 30 years.
Yeah, over 30 years now. So, Mark, thank you so much for reading and writing a nice blog for my book.
My
But
pleasure. Yeah.
I would like to hear what you thought, and you're the expert. on
No,
happiness,
I mean,
so-
I really like your book. I'm not just saying this as a sort of, to be polite, but we study happiness for a long time. But, always also in my mind, I secretly believed that I don't think happiness is the ultimate goal of life for every people, right? But we didn't really have a good alternative word
Yeah.
to I don't know, like scratch that sort of other part. And
Right.
I think you came out with a very wonderful, beautiful concept called psychological richness. And
Thank you.
I personally, I don't know, identify with this idea. And I looked back after reading your book.
Yeah, so I call it psychologically rich life. And I define it, and we define it as a life filled with diverse, really interesting experiences. And some people have a lot of interesting stories and experiences. So somebody who lives psychologically rich life is somebody who has lots of interesting stories to tell and full of those.
Right.
Whereas some people might not have that many interesting stories. So psychologically speaking, not so rich life.
right.
No, I think of your life also as a very psychologically rich one. I mean, you grew up.
But materially not rich.
Psychologically, right? All talking about psychological richness.
Korea is a very competitive society,
Yep.
right? And would you have any suggestions for maybe Japanese and Korean people who live in this society?
I think the social comparison is the one factors that we live in a society, Japan and Korea. There are just very clear ideal. Once you do that, once you're try to live up to these sort of external standards, objective standards, then always you're just comparing yourself with somebody else. And essentially, social comparison is the number one, most toxic thing you can do to yourself.
Right.
But disengaging from social comparison is really difficult with the social media and everything.
Right.
And you really have to have your own internal standard.
But at the same time, I think a lot of Koreans also kind of know that. How toxic that is. But at the same time, in everyday real life, it's very difficult to realistically.
Sure.
So I don't know, a more sort of a practical sort of way, or
Just in reality,
Totally.
there are just so many different ways people can live their life and good life.
yeah,
So I think that's one way. But also another way is if you just can't help comparing yourself,
right.
then I think you have to compare within you,
Right.
Past
Good
you,
point.
last year, 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And maybe you can improve within
Yeah.
yourself, but not relative to somebody else.
Right.
And I think that mindset is really helpful. If you cannot get out of this, this mindset of social comparison. Yeah.
Especially, I was sort of happy to hear the news that your book was coming out in Korean, because we live in a very sort of, textbook style of life.
Sure.
In a
That's
box.
right.
This is what you're supposed to do when you're 23, 32, you marry and all that, right?
Right.
So there's very little leverage in
Yeah.
terms of
Yeah.
what kind of life you choose to do. And they feel anxious when they feel they're stepping outside the line.
right.
But your, I think, book is saying it's okay.
Right, exactly.
This is what life meant to be and all that. So I think it's a sort of, I don't know, it's a big cheerleader for a lot of, I think, Koreans who think about, ponder about if whether this life, this is all, you know, they have these types of questions, right? And like, you're just trying to suggest, in a multi-dimensional way, how life is much more interesting, not necessarily more happier, but and the messages, I think, I totally sort of support personally, and also as a psychologist, I really like the whole content of your book. Another sort of question is, but more and more, it looks like people think their everyday sort of decisions in regards to social interactions are very complicated, and people, it looks like, more and more hate sort of investing more than they necessarily need to get out of this difficult sort of like social life, is to not have any social lives at all and like watch their phones and all this, right?
I think increasingly, I think we live in a society with so much time pressure and efficiency and productivity. So I think that's that toxic mindset in terms of social relationships, right? Like, in order to have any kind of relationships, of course, the best is you don't have to plan anything. You're in the same place, and then you just say, oh, hey, let's have a cup of coffee. So I think it's really tempting, especially the busy individual, busy professionals, to just, schedule everything and make sure everything is, self-contained. But at the same time, as you know, in the long run, these like social relationships, without social relationship, it is really, really difficult to live life. I mean, we do so many professional things, and then even when you accomplish something, if you cannot say, "Oh, I got promoted," to anyone,
Exactly.
how sad is that? Right?
I think it's personally, it's a worrisome point too. It's not just a specific culture thing, but maybe it's a global thing that's happening, and everybody's kind of more sort of careful about like having like on the moment like type of social interactions and all that. Oh, okay. I guess the most important question. I wonder if you know the exact Korean translation of your book, which is quote unquote, happiness does not complete life. That's the Korean title. Well, but
very good.
Oh, you like it? Oh, all right. So, people who will be reading this book, any sort of word as an author you would like to send to Korean readers about this book, or like the main ideas or whatever?
Yeah. So I think the main idea is that happiness is wonderful. I mean, there's no question about it. But so many people, it is really difficult to feel completely happy. And if you feel like struggling to gain happiness or achieve happiness, then maybe you are pursuing the wrong thing. Maybe what you are going after is something like psychological richness or experiential richness. And at the end of the life, you can say, oh, what a journey. I had a lot of interesting experiences. And maybe that's what you want to, pursue. I feel like, you cannot give any meaningful, essentially, advices if you just lived a very conventional life and then one type of life and didn't really explore. So I think psychological richness is not for everybody, but at the same time, I think, I think it's a wonderful mindset. That the failures and everything could be easily justified.
Right.
Is it okay? That was short.
Yeah.